Welcome back, Strong Lungs fans. Here's the craziest Lunerboonie fight you'll ever imagine. Fango versus the Storm Maidens. Yeah, these things are called Storm Maidens, and I know they were previously called the Anime Cloud Girls. I said previously. Is what I was actually trying to say, but yeah. Oh, I used to call them that. I just thought maybe Storm Maidens would be a better name for them. But yeah, anyway, like the Storm Maidens, yeah. These big girls, they're like always up to no good. And when you think about it, it's a problem. Anyway, yeah. I know we got like the blue one. I've actually been given these Lunerboonies names, but I want to like save their names for another time. Yeah, I mean I know we got the blue one and like maybe like 3 white ones. Maybe there's like 4 of them. We got a purple one. We got 2 purple ones, and we got like one that's a grayish purplish color. And we got yeah. Yeah, the white one on the like the very like yeah, the white one, sorry, I was just trying to get in my seat before I could say it. Yeah, the white one like right before. I mean the white one wearing the pink, not the white one wearing the blue next to the blue Storm Maiden. Yeah, a maiden's meant to be like a magical girl, is what I realized once I looked it up. Because I noticed, and since these girls are made of storm clouds, I decided to call them the Storm Maidens. And I came up with a good sound for them, and they are absolutely scary. You probably don't want to know how scary these sounds are. They're actually like those same sounds. They're actually meant to be the same sounds as the ones people's been hearing around the world. The ones that comes from the sky. So yeah. Now this episode... Yeah, let's just start with the episode. So this episode opens underwater with a submarine. And yeah, you see this submarine. Let's say it's one of these submarines. Strong Lungs actually has quite a few submarines. Maybe it's one like this. Let's say the submarine looked like this, kind of like it was like this big. And yeah, we see people outside it. Like, it's underwater and there's these people looking for the scuba divers. They're looking for a rock with an alien signature. AKA, of course, a Lunerboonie signature. And then that's when we see them come across it. And once they found it, they take it to the submarine. So yeah, they take it and bring it to the submarine. Or let's say the submarine comes over to it, and then the bottom of it, like there's this big door like that opens in the bottom of it, and then this crane comes out to get it, and then it brings it inside it. Yeah, there was actually 8 of them. There's actually 8 of them that had a Lunerboonie signature. And then it takes all 8 of them and then it brings them up to shore. And then that's when they bring them. Yeah, this is what they looked like. So, yeah. We see that the submarine, once we see its return into Strong Lungs, and we see it's like once it comes up to the surface at the harbor. And yeah. And then when we see the crane pick up the rock there's another door on top of it, and then there's these cranes that gets the rocks, like crystal rocks, and then they lift them onto a semi, like a flatbed truck, and that's when we see the truck on the way to the military. And then that's when we see people. And that's when we cut to yeah, Fangy and Fango just minding their own business, doing their own thing. And then that's when we see Hacker say he shows up and tells. He says he was gonna tell Fango that the Dream Gate just opened, but he changed his mind on doing that because he thought Fango looked a little too busy. He says, I'll remind him later, or maybe he'll find out. I mean, whatever Lunerboonie just came through the Dream Gate just showed up, but well, no. But the other part is the Lunerboonie from the Dream Gate, the ones that are in the crystal rocks. That's what these crystal rocks are. Is them inside it. They haven't even like hatched from the rocks yet. But like, that's when we see Fangy and Fango playing video games outside. It's actually funny, but hey, it's cool at the same time. We see like Dimey shows up saying, "Hey guys, what are you playing?" He says it's called it's called a Ship versus Cloud. Yeah, it's where you play as a battleship and you have to defeat all these evil clouds. Yeah, and then when all of a sudden that's when we see he says, I also got like my mecha suit known as the Battleship Bot 8000. I might use it once the next Lunerboonie arrives, but I'm kind of in the middle of this. I'm actually, one more cloud to, I'm almost defeated the boss. He says, dang, he got me. He says, oh look, it's the boss. Ugh. He says, man. But when he tries to defeat it, it defeats him. He says, oh man, he got me. It's okay, it ain't that big of a game. Fangy says, it's fine. Yeah, we see that Fango. He says, man, he got me. But we see that Fango says, it's okay, it's a game. Yeah, he knows better than to get mad over it. It didn't trigger him or anything, which is good. It's actually kind of funny. And then we see, and I'm about to plan the rest of it in a little bit. Yeah, we see that Fangy and Fango goes. We see that their friend shows up. Hacker shows up. He says, "Hey, Hacker." Yeah. And then Hacker says, "Hi. Has anything came through the Dream Gate lately?" Hacker was gonna say yes, but he didn't want to, so he just lied to Fango and said no. He says, not really, but might, well, soon. Yeah, that's when and then he walks off. He says, Fango asks, hey, you want to come over and spend some time? And then when he sees, he looks on. And then that's when he tells him, he doesn't tell him the truth quite yet. But like when he sees, he says, he just says that, we just noticed that he's like outside. Or not outside, but they're having their time together. And they're about to throw a party, but then when Fango says, nah, I'm bored. He says, I'm kind of in the mood for, he says, are you really? He says, and then that's when he doesn't want to tell Fango the truth yet until he's ready to. Fango says, man, I think I should go. I gotta get some exercise out. Maybe fighting a Lunerboonie could get me some exercise. He says, oh yeah. Oh, good thinking. That just reminded me. the dream gate opened. He says, oh, really? He says, wait, but I don't think it's attacking the world just yet. He says, maybe let's think of some stuff that you can do to make people enjoy your party some more. He says, okay, He keeps thinking. He says, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, oh, good choice. And he says, and that's when he says, or let's say that he doesn't tell them what, they don't give him the options in this scene. Let's say, like, he says, Hacker says, maybe we can, while we wait for whatever that came through the dream gate to come on the news, we can think of what we should do to make your party better. Yeah. And then Fango says, good idea. Now I love that plan. But after that scene, that's when we cut to the military base. And they're like, that's when we see that the people, there's a scientist saying that the truck arrives, we see that the truck arrives at the military base, and then they bring the crystal rock to the lab. Like, there was actually 8 of them. There was like 8 of them. He brought the 8 rock. Yeah, he brought them to the lab, he says. And then the general says, these are some... well, I never seen something like this before. These are one crazy unknown rock to discover. Yeah, he says, and then that's when the scientist asks, let's say this is Cransborough, yeah. These guys, these soldiers, these like guys that, they're like little like dog or bear looking dudes, and they're like a teal type color, or they're just like a bright green. And that's when they decide that they say, one says maybe we should have a look inside. And that's when he grabs this machine. Yeah, it's like a laser type tool, and these scientists says that these scientists says that they should probably, that they command the other scientists to cut open the rocks with this laser cutting machine. This, like, they call it a cutting laser, like they call it a laser cutter or whatever. Yeah, let's call it a laser cutter, the laser cutter 8000. But then that's when the general shows up, and then he tells them to not cut open the rock. He just shows up and warns them. And he just warns them. Oh, sorry for the cursor getting on screen. Yeah, he warns the scientists against using the tool on the rocks, cause he's afraid something bad's gonna happen. Cause he says he has no idea what kind of power these scientists are dealing with. So that's why he tells them not to use it. They keep asking him that. They keep telling him that they really want to use it. But the general he tells them no again, because he's still afraid about a bad omen happening. But he's still afraid that a bad omen's going to happen. But then they ask him, they say, it's only for this project. And then he says, okay, fine. That's what the general says. He says, okay, fine. And then he says, go ahead. Yeah, they still... And so therefore they used the tool anyway. They did after they said thank you for the general, after he said, okay, fine, go ahead. And once they did, turns out it doesn't do anything to the rocks. They did it on, like, all 8 of the rocks, but nothing happens. And then that's when, well, they weren't looking, that's when we see a crack appear in all 8 of the rocks. Also, I want to tell you that the general of Strong Lungs is a pineapple, by the way. Anyway, yeah, and that's when we cut back to Fango and his friends planning out the party. Hacker tells him that he said, yeah, he asks Fango, like, right? He asks Fango quite a few questions. Some he said yes to, some he said no to. But then after a few of them, we see Fango ask if he can fight the Lunerboonie that came through the Dream Gate yet. Hacker says, no, not yet. That's for sure. And then that's when we see Daimi get home from school. He tells them that Axel, the axe, was bullying him once again. At least he wasn't. But, and then Fango said, man, he's been bullying you. How about you teach him a lesson? He says, I don't want to be violent, okay? Listen, I told him that I don't want to be violent, so therefore I wasn't, said Daimi. He says, he just tells them, he just doesn't want to get detention for, like, hurt, like being mean to somebody, you know? Yeah. He just wants to, like, at least follow the school rules. At least, but he's just glad that Axel never, like hurt him, like, punched him or kicked him to bully him. He just made, like, he just called him names and made fun of him. And then, yeah. He told him that they also, he said, yeah. He says, he doesn't only just bully me at school, he bullies me, like, in quite a few other places. I'm pretty good at encountering him. He shows up and then bullies me in, like, all sorts of places. And it ain't pretty, man. He says, it ain't pretty. It's crazy, awful. And like, Daimi's like, Fango says, dang, we really gotta teach this kid a lesson. He says, yeah. And that's when we see. And then this is when Fango shows up. And then when Daimi encounters Axel, he says, that's when he, yeah, let's say we get a time card that says, or let's say, Fango, after Daimi tells, like, or Fango tells Daimi that they have to teach Axel a lesson. That's when we hear a doorbell. That's when we hear the doorbell ring. He says, they go and ring. He says, ah! He says, what the? Hey, dudes! He says, oh no, that's Axel. And then Fango says, aha! It's the bully, the dude who bullies my boy Daimi. He says, bully? Why not? It's fun. I do it for fun. All I do is make fun of him and call him names. I don't like kick him or punch him. He says, well, yeah, you're lucky you don't do that. Actually, I'm the lucky one. I'm just so lucky you don't do that to him. But it ain't okay. But just using your mind to bully him isn't the right thing either. Listen, man. I know you. He says, all I do is I just do it to entertain myself. I'm not doing it. Yeah. He's doing it to entertain himself. He says, well, man, there's a lot. You can't do it that way. You gotta be kind to other people. If you want to entertain yourself, you gotta do it the good way. He says, really? Yeah, bullying is not something you should do to entertain yourself. You know? Yeah. Second of all, why I bully is because somebody bullied me before, and that's why I was doing it to, like cheer myself up. And then he said,
yeah, we don't like bullying.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, yeah. Daimi, yeah, he tells him that he was bullied before and tells Fango why. Another reason why he was doing it. He was trying to, like, entertain himself because he was upset at the other. He was doing it because he was upset and hated because other people at school bullied him. And that's why he's bullying Daimi like every time and everywhere like he just bullies him everywhere where he encounters him. And yeah. And then Fango says, well, thanks for not doing anything too rough. But, hey, even if you just mind bully him, it still ain't right. He says, well, you're still gonna offend him. You know? He says, yeah, all I noticed was all I could do was, like use my mind. I didn't want to be too violent. He says, well, that's good, because that's a good thing. Yeah, he just tells him that it's good, that he wasn't trying to, like hurt him or anything, but all he was doing, he wasn't trying to hurt him except his feelings. He was only trying, he was just trying to offend Daimi because he was offended by people, other bullies who offended him before. Says, that's when he learns his lesson. He says, every time, yeah. Yeah, and he says, that's when Daimi shows up. He says, here's what I'm gonna do. He says, could you bring Daimi over here, please? I'm not gonna bully him or anything. He says, what are you gonna do? He says, I'm gonna apologize to him. He says, oh, good. Well, that's a good choice. He says, and then Daimi says, oh, really? Oh, right, says Daimi, and then we see him run towards the door because he heard what Alex and Fango said, because he was so excited that Axel was going to apologize to him. But we don't see that part. Because instead of us showing, Axel apologizing to Daimi, we cut to the scene where, General, or let's say that's when we cut to the General, or actually, let's say, well, this is actually meant to be day 2 after the first day, because this is like the day where Axel apologized, because the second day is when, this isn't, he says, let's just say we show him the scene where he just apologizes, and then Daimi says, it's okay, Axel, I could understand why you were bullying me now. I'm sorry other people bullied you before. He says, yeah, it's, yeah, he tells him that, and that's when Daimi feels bad for Axel finally, and that's when they finally become friends. And then he says, maybe you should come to our party. He says, party? I love parties! And then that's when they hang out together and start partying. And then, and then after, that's when it says, 5 hours later, it says, we see them dancing at the party at nighttime, because it's so much fun. They're listening to catchy music, and it's just their lucky day. He said, oh my gosh, I love this song. And I'll tell you what the song is, because I'll try and think of a good song that he likes. Daimi says, ooh, this is a catchy song. Yeah, and then he says, yeah, and then we zoom, and that's when we just zoom out of the party. We just zoom out and see everybody dancing, everyone who's over at Fango's house. We see that Mac, the car, is there too, and then that's when we cut outside, and then we zoom out and see the colorful lights, the color changing lights in their windows, and all sorts of stuff like that. And then that's when we get a time card that says the next day, and then that's when we cut to General Piney. Yep, that's his name, General Piney, the pineapple general. He gets a call on his phone. He says, what is it? And then and then all of a sudden, we see that we hear a man say, a strong lung say, he says, look out the window, he says it like very nervously. He says, "Huh? Why?" He says, or no, let's just say let's say he doesn't ask why. Let's just say he says, "Huh?" He says, "Okay, but why?" Or let's say he does ask why, but when he opens the curtain to look out the window, that's when we cut the camera angle. That's when we cut to him looking out the window, and then he makes a shock, like a look on it. We see like a look. He goes like, he makes like a shocked or terrified look on his face. He looks up, and then we see him rush out. He says, "What the?" And then he rushes outside, and that's when we hear. And then this is the part with the storm maidens. So yeah, before we see them, that's when the camera cuts to an error rate siren. And there's also this other alarm. It's an alarm that sounds like this. Actually, I should have muted the microphone to do that. Let's try again with the microphone muted. And then, yeah, that sound's actually coming from it's called an alarm tower. Those are like for it's like telling strong lungs to evacuate the area. Haven't drawn one yet, but I will. Sorry about that. Someone interrupted again. My podcast. Sorry. Anyway, yeah. I'll show you what the alarm towers looks like when I draw them. But I want to explain the rest of this episode right now. So yeah, maybe it could be parts of one of the siren towers. That's probably, let's say that maybe it's just one of the siren towers, the air raid siren towers, or maybe we should make them different. The, emergency evacuation towers. We'll just call them like either siren towers or alarm towers. Yeah. And they're usually for emergency evacuation. Yeah, they just tell strong lungs they just tell them to evacuate when there's an emergency that requires them to. But yeah, after we cut to the tower making that sound, let's say we also hear an air raid siren in the background. That's when we cut to the storm maidens, the bottom of them, and then we pan up to them, and that's when we hear them make this sound. And that's when, and after and that's when we see the military show up trying to destroy we see that the storm maidens are full of thunder and lightning. We see, he says, "Fire!" Yeah, the general says, "Fire!" And then the missile shoots them. And that's when, they shoot them we see a whole bunch of like tanks and like Humvees and rocket launcher trucks, and also 2 vehicles that the Strong Lungs invented, 2 military vehicles. We call it a cannon truck. It's a truck with a cannon on it. And we got a laser van. It's got a laser cannon on top of it. And of course we got the attack helicopters and fighter jets targeting at them. Yeah, the first thing that attacks is they all start shooting. Let's say that the laser vans don't fire yet. They fire after there's also after the tanks, Humvees, fighter jets, and rocket launching trucks and attack helicopters. They shoot them with bullets, rockets, and missiles, and has no effect. And that's when they make and once the missiles hits them, they make this sound. And yeah, we see, they make that sound when they get hit. It's like their it's like their ow sound. Yeah, you know, that same sound. And the part where I have to say sorry about that again, it's just somebody doesn't know. The person who's in here other than me doesn't know that they have to not talk while I'm podcasting.
Sorry,
but yeah.
Didn't realize.
Sorry. And sorry about it again.
I'll be quiet. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Sorry about that still, but yeah. Anyway, yes. So yeah, they make their ow type sound. They go like, or however I can make the sound with my voice. I probably wouldn't want to. And yeah, it's not a very comfortable sound. And that's when their eyes start glowing their color. We see the color of their lightning. Now yeah, might need the mouse for this. So yeah, this one is full of red lightning. This one is full of yellow. And this one's full of this one's full of orange. This one's full of green. And this one's got blue. And this one's got purple. This one's got white. And this one's got pink. Yeah. And once their eyes glows their color of their lightning, that's when they begin. And that's when they fight. Yeah. They don't fight back yet. And then that's when the laser van shows up. That's when it's their turn to shoot at them. And once they do shoot at them, it does absolutely nothing. But all they do is make that same sound again. But then that's when their eyes glows brighter. And then you see their eyes glows. Let's say that the laser vans shoots them before their eyes glows. And then they say, they shoot after the military says, no effect. It appears, he says, General, it appears missiles don't have effect on these creatures. Or maybe you should say, it appears these missiles don't have any effect on these creatures. And then that's when the laser vans fire. And it doesn't stop them. And then that's when after the laser van shoots them, their eyes glows. And that's when they use their very violent wing power. And then that's all of a sudden, that's when they all open their mouths. And then they make this sound. That sounds like this, and their mouths start sucking up things. And after the creatures makes the sound, that's when we see a whole bunch of stuff being sucked up by. We see a whole bunch of cars. That's when the general knows that they got a tornado mouth, and that's when they evacuate. And that's, let's say after they suck up a few of them, and then that's when they breathe it out. Yeah. Well, actually, let's say they just breathe in with their mouth, and then they just blow it out, and then he just blows the tanks away. That's they roar, and then as they're breathing in, and the general says, "Let's get out of here!" And then that's when we cut back to Fango's house, and then we see Axel and Daimi are watching a show. He says, "This is the best show I ever watched." It's called Elephant and Pig. It's about a pig and an elephant and a pig who hangs out together. He says, "Are you guys?" We see that a strong lung. We see that Fango's like kind of. We see that Tori is feeling that Tori the tornado's hanging out with them, and he's very tired and he's not feeling too good. And then that's when he makes his breakfast look like a tired. He makes his breakfast. He sees he makes himself some food. He says, we see that Sid the Rainbow makes him something to eat. And then it's like a happy face. But then Tori turns it into a sleepy face. Because he's not feeling too good. And after we cut, after we see him change the happy face to a tired face, that's when we cut to the TV of Pig being tired at the wrong time. He says, and the elephant asks Pig, he says, "Pig, are you okay?" Pig, and then Sid asks Tori if he's okay. He says, or Fango asks, "Tori, are you okay?" Tori, and that's when we see. Then we cut to the TV and the pig says, we see Pig says, "I'm tired, man. I don't know why." He says, "I'm tired, man. It's." And then Tori says it too. He says, "I'm tired, man. I didn't get it good enough." That's when Patrick says, "I'm tired. I didn't get good enough sleep tonight." And then that's when we see Tori say the same thing. He says, we see, and when that's when he says, this actually, let's say this was on a Saturday morning, like, sorry to stop talking, but yeah, let's say Fango asks, "You want to go to the mall or something to wake you up?" And then Tori says, "Yeah," and he's on, and then he just makes an agreement. That's when we see, like, and the elephant on the TV asks the same question, and then the pig says, "Oh sure, that'll get me totally woken up." He says, "Let me just caffeinate myself," and then the elephant says, "Okay," and then Tori says the same thing. And that's when they're so excited, and then that's when we cut to them at the mall. And that's when we see, and then they come across Robert. He says, and then Diamond says, "Oh hey, Robert," and then that's when we see Axel say, "Wait, you know this guy?" And then Diamond says, "Yeah, I know him. He's not quite as smart." He says, "Yeah, I've heard of him." And then he says, "Hey Robert, what's up?" And he says, I'm feeling something. Yeah." And then he says, "I just came here just to hang out." And then he says, "Well, it's nice meeting you." He says, I'm gonna go hang out with Hacker." And then he walks up to Hacker and says, "Hey Hacker, what's up?" Then he says, This is strange," he says. And then, and after, Hacker says, "Hey," he says, "Hey Robert, there's something strange." He says, "This is strange." And then Robert says, "What's strange?" He says, "There's a strange weather anomaly that's like somewhere in Cransboro. It's 40 miles west from here, like slightly north." But he says, "Wait, he says, what do you mean by strange?" He says, "There's like crazy like wind speeds and colliding air pressure and all sorts of that kind of stuff." He says, well, that's strange. Never seen something like that before." Yeah, we know what Hacker's talking about. He's detecting the storm maidens with. Yeah, we'll realize what he's detecting, and that's when we see. And that's when we see that, and that's when we see Daimi and Axel say something. That's when he says, "Hey guys, what's going on?" And they meet Robert and Hacker. He says, "Oh hey Robert, hey Hacker, what's going on?" Robert says, "Hacker said Hacker says there's a strange weather anomaly that's that is like 40 miles into like Cransboro. There's a weather anomaly in Cransboro, a very strange one," he said. Well, let's say Hacker says it's a very strange one. It's got crazy wind speeds and such ones. I don't know. It's got colliding air pressure. I don't even know. It's got very violent wind speeds. I don't know what's going on, but it's crazy. He says, "Okay." Axel says, "You're not detecting a hurricane, are you? There's not a hurricane or a tornado near Stronglands, is there? Or a dust storm?" He says, "No, it's, I don't know, but it's a very..." He says, "Wait a minute. I think it came from the Dream Gate." Axel says, "Dream Gate? What's that?" The thing, the portal that the Lunerboonies comes through. That strange weather anomaly might as well just be a Lunerboonie." He says, and then Fango says, "What? I gotta..." And then he says, "When you start seeing something, let us know." And then he says, and then that's when we see the storm. That's when we see storm clouds approach, and he says, "Oh look, there's some clouds pulling in." He says, "Oh, they're big." He says, "We should probably go." He says, "Guys," and then that's when we see the sky starts to darken due to the clouds blocking out the sun. He says, "Guys, there's a storm coming." He says, "It's starting to get scary." He says, "Guys, we're gonna get blown." He says, "We're gonna get blown to bits. Fango, there's a problem." "A problem?" "Yeah." Well, let's say they were singing, but they couldn't hear Hacker. He says, Hacker says, let's say they're singing together, like their favorite song. He says, "We're staying alive, ha, 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 staying alive." And then Hacker says, "Guys, there's a storm coming." He realizes it's the weather anomaly. "It's starting to get scary. Guys, we're gonna get blown to bits." He says, "Guys!" He says, "Hacker, look! The weather anomaly that I've been detecting he says, the weather anomaly is coming." "Coming?" And once they look out the window, they see the clouds. He says, "That's what..." He says, "Guys!" He says, or before he tells them that the weather anomaly is coming, he says, "Guys, there's trouble! And it's coming up fast!" He says, "Guys!" He says, yeah, the first... Well, I might want to rephrase his, whole thing while his friend, while Axel, Daimi, and Fango are singing Staying Alive. And Hacker, or, Robert joins them, but then Hacker tells them, he says, "Guys, I think the clouds that are coming is..." He says, "Guys, there's a storm coming." Or he says, "Guys, the weather anomaly's coming." He says, "It's starting to get scary." Or let's just say, he says, "Guys, there's a storm coming. It's starting to get scary." He says, "We're gonna get blown to bits." He says, "Guys!" And he says, "What? There's trouble! And it's coming up fast!" He says, "What?" He says, "Trouble? What kind?" He says, "Big trouble." And then, or let's say, Fango says, "Trouble? Where?" "Outside! It's the weather anomaly I was just detecting. And it's approaching Greenridge." And then that's when something appears on the
Okay, not sure what that was, but don't worry about that. That's not a part of our episode. My computer just made that sound. He says, guys! Then once they look out the window, he says, and then let's say they see on a TV, they say, that's when they see the Lunerboonie that just came through the dream gate. He says, oh no. Yeah, they get, Fango says, it's time I get in my mecha suit. He says, come on guys, we gotta go. He says, well, I could probably use your help, guys. Maybe I can give Axel a mecha suit too, he says. And then Axel says, me? But I don't know how to drive a mecha suit. God, and he says, pal, it's easy. He says, Axel, it's easy. It's like, it acts like you. It just works like this. Let me show you. Like this. He says, just move your arms, and you'll see that the mecha suit's arms moves. Its arms and legs is your arms and legs. It's moving the same directions you're moving. It's like, he says, oh, I see how it works. He says, and then we cut to them at home, and then he says, oh yeah, and then he says, okay. He says, now it's time to get those girls. We see that the other strong lungs has a mecha suit too. See, Spoony and Crawley and yeah, Limey's with them, and then we see, yeah, he gives, and that's when we see the other two guys. We see it's like, or let's say maybe it wasn't Lyman or Limey. Yeah, Limey's with them, and then we see that it's a Doggy and Rolly and QB. Yeah, Dimey, Rolly, and QB. Or no, it's Doggy. Yeah, Doggy, Rolly, and QB. It's Bergie, Lockie's, and Ramby's clone. Yeah. Doggy is Bergie's clone, Rolly is Lockie's clone, and QB is Ramby's clone. And we see that they're mecha suits. That's when we cut back to the crazy girls, like the Storm Maidens. He says, what are them? And once we see them approach them, we see Axel says, he says, what are those things? Fango says, or let's say Crawley says, they're Storm Maidens. Or let's say Spoony says it. He says, they're Storm Maidens. They're huge. And we see them destroying everything and making their, and that's when we see them. And that's when and then all of a sudden, and that's when we see them suddenly. He says, and then they see the Fango and his friends come in. He says, okay, here, now point your fists at them. He says, okay, why? Like, point one of your fists. Here, stop right here, and then, okay, now, this is good. This is close enough. Okay, now point your fists at them. Okay, why? He says, whoa! Oh, jeez. Did I really do that? And then Fango says, yeah, it's a rocket fist. Well, the fist, or like it's a missile, like the rockets comes out of the knuckles. He says, what does this do? Now aim it. Now do it like this. Now do this. Okay, now do this. Now do it slowly. And then we see the top of his fist opens, and we see the machine gun come out of it. He says, ooh, this is fun. Look at this. And then he says, but it's not hurting them. Then he stops. He says, and then Penguin says, yeah, you're right, man. Here, try the laser eyes. Just squint at them. He says, The laser eyes don't affect them either. They realize what the strong lungs are trying to do with them. Then he stops squinting and says, Fango, it's not doing anything. And then Fango says, you're right, man, it's not. What is going on? Here, do this. Okay. And the chest opens up, and then a beam, a laser cannon comes out of there and shoots them. But still, nothing happens. And then he stops. He says, this isn't doing anything either. He says, man, Axel, you are totally right. He's just, him and his friends and Axel. Yeah. Fango and Axel are just, and the other guys, they're just like, what's going on? What are these girls made out of? And then he looks to see, he says, and then he realizes that they are Lunerboonie. He says, dang, they're made of storm clouds. He says, they're also, and yeah, I see Lunerboonie DNA in them. They are Lunerboonies. He says, oh, dang, these things are scary. He says, don't worry, man. But I'm a brave man. He says, and I flew, he says, well, that's when they defend themselves, and then they make this same, yeah, they make this sound after they, like, get shot by their attacks. And then Axel says, that didn't sound good. Fango says, it's fine. He says, nope, it sure didn't. These girls are definitely not friendly at all. He says, what are we gonna do? Well, we gotta do something. Yeah. This is Cransboro. They're literally attacking the military. He says, wait, watch out. He says, watch out for those laser eyes. I didn't. Yeah, that's what Axel says. They got laser eyes too. He says, oh gosh. And then they shoot. He tried to shoot them. Or let's say he says, watch out. He says, watch out for those laser eyes. We'll get to that part in like a few seconds. Let's say first they open their mouth very wide, and then their mouth, they got like a tornado mouth. Their mouth like starts sucking things up. He says, ah, go the opposite direction. He says, ah. That's when we see things start getting pulled into their mouths. We see like a few cars get sucked up, then we see houses. We see like a few like power lines. We even see the utility dolls start getting pulled in. We also see those like power line towers that the strong lungs invented. Like they're like big telephone poles. Those get sucked up too. I still want to include a church with all that. Let's say a church gets sucked up too. See the bell. Let's say the bell that was in front of it also gets pulled in. Like pulled right into their mouths. Like ah. He says, come on guys. This is too strong. I think, yeah, their mouth is literally a tornado, and like like there's a lot of buildings getting swallowed, and also there's a news van that gets swallowed. We see a news helicopter get swallowed. We see an arch bridge get swallowed, or it's like a tight arch bridge and it gets pulled in. We also see or let's say that gets destroyed by their lightning eyes. We see we see it get pulled in. We see let's say a bridge gets pulled in, like parts of like a freeway gets pulled in. Then we see a hospital get pulled into, like torn apart and pulled into her mouth. Like ah, everything's just being swallowed. And then we also see a billboard get pulled in. It's like a billboard. We also see a few of the left turn signal water towers get pulled in. We also see like electric pylons get pulled in too. Yeah, we see electric pylons get pulled into their mouths. And let's say we also see like a few of the military vehicles that were attacking her. And we also see a radar tower, the spinning satellite kind gets sucked up. Yeah, and and that's when we see the observations tower. I mean, like the watchtower type, like a lattice type, like the ones like a military guard tower. We see that get sucked up, like swallowed by them. We also see a golf ball radar tower. Like there's a lot of military stuff. Let's say there's like a checkerboard left turn signal water tower gets sucked up. Yeah, because since they're on the military, and we see them just devour everything. Although water towers is actually what they use. They use a few of their like 8 left turn signal water towers to defeat these girls. But the checkerboard water tower wasn't one of them. They just swallow. They breathe in really quick, eating lots of things. But that's when Axel says, "Wait, I have an idea." He uses his laser eyes to stop them. And then he goes like, and then he says, "Axel, what are you doing?" And then it actually hits something like, yeah. And this is the sound. And yeah, they're making this sound as they're trying to swallow them. And then all of a sudden we see them. Once they get shot, that's when we see them finally use their laser eyes. I know, yeah. And that's when we see them shoot at. Then they're like electrical eyes. Yeah, we see they make the same sound they made when they were swallowing cars. Of course, they make this sound yet again. Okay, I probably shouldn't have done that. Probably shouldn't have muted the microphone while I was still recording, but I should have paused it and then muted it and then unmuted it. Well, I probably shouldn't have muted it while I was recording, but it'll be okay. I'm sure it won't. I'm sure it's okay. I'm not even gonna say it. I just hope it doesn't happen, because I don't want to have to start all over again. Because I'm actually liking how I'm telling this story right now. So yeah, they shoot them with their electrical eyes. They destroy a news van. They explode a news van. Once the lightning bolt hits them, they destroy a bridge. And then they suddenly, that's when they destroy a few buildings, including a motel. Or a hotel. Sorry, some people call them motels other than hotels. I would just call them a hotel. They destroy that. Then they destroy a fire station with their electrical eyes, and then they cut through a power line, and then they destroyed a few of the street light towers, including the utility dolls. They're definitely going to destroy those. They exploded a crowd tram with their electrical eyes. Then they destroyed a left turn signal water tower. They derailed a train by shooting its tanker cars with their eyes, and it explodes in a whole row. And then they even shoot an airport. They destroy one of the airliners, and the airplanes, destroys the airplanes. And they end up destroying the airport control tower. And yeah, that's pretty much the last, that's what it's not the last thing they destroy. They continue destroying things. Some things they swallow, they suck into their mouth. They suck up with their mouth. Some things they just shoot with their eyes. then they use their mouth again, but then they use their eyes a few times. Axel's like saying, "Be careful!" Fango says, but then they breathe in and then blow them away when they try to attack them. They go like, ah! He says, ah! Fango says, "Good thing there's 8 of us. That's especially why. I chose 8 of us because there's 8 of these monsters." He says, Axel says, "What are we gonna do? Since they're made of water, I heard that storm maidens cannot withstand being splashed. And then while he's planning, he says, maybe we could use some of, that's when Crawley says, maybe we can use some of Cransborough's left turn signal water towers to defeat them. We gotta grab 8 of them." Fango says, "That's a good idea, but we gotta grab 8 of them to defeat them. There's 8, because there's 8 of these creatures." And then that's when they throw. First they try, he says, there's an energy core inside them. He says, they try to go inside it. He says, let's try hitting their energy core first. But when they try to hit their energy core, when they try to go inside them, they do get on inside the Storm Maiden's body, but then a strong force of their power pushes them out of their bodies. So that's when they go and then they just laugh a little bit. And then after that, that's when they grab the left turn signal water towers. He says, he says, "Axel, are you a good thrower even?" He says, "Yeah. I've learned how to throw things like a ball or like a frisbee. Maybe throw that one like a frisbee." He says, "Okay, just spin around." He says, they spin around so many times while some just suddenly spin in circles while and then they threw the water towers so far, and then after they spent enough times, they threw the water tower so hard they ended up hitting the Storm Maidens. We see them burst right through. You just see them fly right through their cloudy flesh, and then we see them hit the energy core, and water squirt all over it or splash all over it, which causes it to lose power and then suddenly burst. And then that's when they realize what and that's when we see their shine, their the cores, we see shines come out of burst through their skin. That's when they suddenly make their final roar. And then after that, that's when, after they make their final roar, all 8 of them explodes, and then the cloudy sky disappears. Well, it doesn't disappear, it just clears. It just, the storm clouds that they were creating that clouded up the sky suddenly clears, and the force clears the sky. And that's when we see all their colors splatter all over the place. Or their flesh. Their cloud matter flesh turns into goop. And then Fango says, and then Axel says, "Ugh, what is this?" It's the what the anime cloud girls were made out of. I'm not sure how Storm Maidens, not anime cloud girls. He actually has to say it's what the Storm Maidens were made out of. Their storm cloud flesh turned into goop after we killed them with those left turn signal water towers, and then after they got defeated, that's when we see the strong lungs return. He says, "Come on, y'all, let's get out. Let's go home and get out of here." But we don't cut to them at their house yet. First, we cut to the general saying, "Ah, dang, our base is destroyed." And then he says, "Now look what you scientists have done. My base is destroyed." And then the scientist says, "General, we're very sorry. We should have listened to you." And then the general says, "Well, thanks for at least finally realizing that we probably shouldn't have used the laser cutter on those crystal rocks, cause otherwise none of this wouldn't," like he says, otherwise he would say, "cause otherwise none of this would have been happening." And then that's when we cut to Fango and his friends back at home, and that's when we see, that's when we say, now, he says, Hacker says, "Now when are you gonna," he says, "Well, hope Fango gets his reward." He says, "I hope you get your reward, Fango, after defeating those monsters." Axel says, "Oh yeah, good. Yeah, that's a good idea." He says, and then that's when we see the governor bring rewards. He says, "Yeah, also for the little axe guy who used to be a bully to the kid named Dimey." He says, "Oh, I get a reward too? Thank you so much." And then it ends with him, and then everybody says, "Sometimes people who turns good needs a reward too." And then they all laugh, and then that's when the episode ends.